Hello guys, in this video we'll learn how can we send an HTTP request in Rust. Now for the same purpose we need some dependencies, so let's quickly add them. As we know, when we call an endpoint it can take certain time to respond, so basically we have to wait for that response. So we'll be using the same concept of async and await that we learned in a previous video. I'll attach that video. If you haven't checked out, first check out that video. So we'll be using Tokyo for our async programming, and we'll use version as latest and features as full. Then we need a high level client library, so we'll be using request for that with the latest version. Now I get this option in my IDE to build the changes. If you don't, you can just use cargo build and cargo update to build and update your changes. Once our dependencies are built, we will, yeah, here it is. Now let's get back to our main method. First of all, we'll make our main as async. Now as we learned in the async series, we have to add this on top of our main. Now let's create a client, so we'll say client builder, and here we can define some properties. Let's say we want a timeout of 5 seconds for all the requests, then we can do that. And let's say if you have some default headers or anything that you want to set on the client level, you can set here, but for now I'll just build it. As you can see, it sends us a result of client. So basically if the build is successful, it sends me a client. If it fails, it will send an error. But let's unwrap it to panic and give the error if there is any. So our client is ready, and now what we can do is let's print here sending request. Now we need an endpoint, a public endpoint, to check and test our first call. So I'll be using this public endpoint from Decify. I'll drop the link in the description, so if you want to play around, basically we call a get and we get this response. So let's copy it and we'll be using this. So we'll say client dot get and pass our URL because it's a get request, then send, and because it can take certain time to process, so we have to await for the response. Now we'll be using match because there can be two types of response, a okay response and a failure. So let's go ahead and first say okay, then we get some response and we'll say print, and let's print response dot status. If there is an error, then we just print our error by saying error calling, and here we can print our error. Now just one last thing, since it will be waiting for the completion, so we have to return some kind of unit from here. So either we get a unit or we will get an error. So that error will be of request error, because if this fails building the client, then we will raise a error and we have to quit. If it reaches this point, then we have to return. So it's pretty much ready. Let's go ahead and run it. As you can see, sending request and we get a 200 response. But what if I change it to ABC and then do cargo run? Okay, as you can see, we get a 404. Basically our status is 404 in this. Now let's go ahead and try to use our body of the response. So we'll say response dot text dot await and then unwrap the response. Now let's do cargo run. There you go, we get our response that we saw here: format, domain, disposable, and DNS. Same format, domain, disposable, and DNS. So you can play around with it, use different endpoints, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the comments. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.